From our perspective, looks at the lives and behaviors of millennials, Generation Z, and the changes that are happening in our 21st century and the innovators that are making it happen. We will explore trends, technology, music, fashion, social media, business, science, the arts, faith, and lifestyle. We would look at their interests, how are they changing our 21st century, and what is causing market disruptions, and what does that mean? From our perspective, it's not just another talk show. There will be roving reporters from the Caribbean, Europe, and North America. This will be a show of learning, exploring, questioning, listening, and creative ideas. So come join us on Comcast, Verizon, and online.
My name is Michelle, and this is my story.
My name is Carla, and this is my story.
My name is Chandra, and this is my story.
So when I was 16, I was pretty wild. My mom wasn't home a lot, and I was an only child, so I would party with friends and hang out of the house all hours of the night. And one night I had met this guy, and he was 29 when I met him, and I mean, he was great. All the girls were jealous. My own friends were kind of mad that he had been so interested in me, but he was able to give me experiences. I mean, other guys my age couldn't. He would take me out all the time. We'd go to expensive restaurants. He'd buy me these gifts, and it was really great. But he would always remind me of all the things that he would do for me. So if there was any time where I felt like I wasn't hanging out with my own friends the same way that I was with him, he would say, "Oh, but I got you this necklace, so don't you think you should spend the time with me?" And I just felt so guilty. I kind of stopped hanging around my friends as much. And a couple of months down the line, I realized one night that I hadn't had my period in a while, and found out I was pregnant. And he was so pissed. He was so mad at me, and he was throwing my stuff in the trash and hitting the wall and telling me that I wasn't careful and I didn't appreciate all the things that he had done for me, because I was excited about it and I wanted to keep this child, and he didn't. So he told me that he would leave me if I kept it. I went home that night, and my mom was there, and I told her, and I thought she'd be mad at me, but she wasn't mad at me, and she talked me through it. And I mean, I kept him. My son is 2 now. One day Eric tried to come back and tell me how sorry he was, but my mom called the cops and he was never to be seen again. She told me that I wasn't alone and that I didn't have to depend on anyone else. She'd always be there for me.
I guess it's been, what, 5 years now? I was 18 years old, had some problems at home. My parents were separating and I was starting my freshman year in college. I was in a dark place mentally. I was living in the dorm halls with some friends and it was nice to be away from home, but then my roommate's father moved in with us. He seems nice, just trying to keep an eye on his daughter, just like any father would want to do. And he became like a father to us. He was friendly, cooked great meals, did our laundry, and he told us stories of his stint in the military, all the important people he knew in law enforcement, and the various countries he traveled to because of his work. He's always able to know when I felt low. He would come into my room and sit and talk. He said because he was in the military, he had some level of psychological training. So he was able to diagnose me with depression and suicidal tendencies, something I didn't know I had, but I believed him. He seemed so concerned, said he wanted to protect me. And I wasn't getting that at home. I mean, my parents were too busy arguing to even notice me. He told me to call my parents and tell them it was best that I didn't come home for summer break, that he's trained in psychology and because he would be able to help me get over my severe depression. And if I were to come home, things would only get worse. So I became a victim of sex trafficking, and it's still hard to say it, but I'm hoping my story can save someone like me.
After my parents' divorce, I moved to a new city with my mom, and I started 10th grade in a new high school, which was a very awkward time because everybody kind of already had their friend groups, and I'm not very good at making friends, so I was very lonely for a very long time. The only time people noticed me was in class when a teacher would point out my work or when I'd get a really high grade on something. And so people would often want me in their groups and reach out to me then. And I kind of felt used, but it was also nice to feel seen once in a while. And one time I was working in a group with a girl who was one of the more popular girls, and she genuinely seemed to like me and want to get to know me, and she invited me to eat lunch with her, and I was very excited because I usually ate lunch by myself. And so eventually she would invite me to things, and she invited me to a party, and of course I said yes because I'd never been invited anywhere before. So I go to this party and it's a little uncomfortable at first, but then this guy approaches me and he was really tall and really, really out of my league, and so I was really nervous. But he offered me drinks and I didn't want to be nervous anymore, so I drank them. Eventually I got a little too drunk, but instead of him taking advantage of me like he could have maybe, he offered to drive me home, and he took me home safely, and I thought to myself, this is a really good guy. So in school, he found me, and he got my number, and we just talked every day, and I had friends to sit with, and I just felt like this time was like a honeymoon period in my life where I had friends, I had a guy who was actually into me, and it felt great. They did, though, oftentimes, they would ask me to do work for them. He was on the basketball team, and he would say sometimes, I'm always in practice, I don't always have time to do homework, so, I would do it for him. And sometimes for his basketball friends. And, you know, I felt as though, you know, I didn't have much more to offer them besides, you know, being smart. And eventually when we did date, this guy, he would always pressure me and until like wanting to have sex, but I told him I wanted to wait. And at first he was nice about it, but later he would start saying like things that would imply that he could find another girl, or that maybe I wasn't giving him enough, even though I thought, you know, the homework and all of that would be enough. And when I would tell my friends, they would tell me that, yeah, like, you know, you're not the prettiest girl, so might as well just, you know, give him something else or else he's gonna leave you. And so I gave in. I gave in, and he would have sex, and he would also tell me certain ways that I should look so that he would want to be more intimate with me. Like he would tell me to wear my hair a certain way or wear a certain wig or whatever just to please him. And I did it because, you know, he was gonna leave me. And I didn't want to go back to being that lonely girl. Eventually I got pregnant, and I told him, and he immediately told me that I should have an abortion. But I couldn't do it. So I kept the baby, but all of my friends were against me. He was against me. Everybody turned their backs on me. And I was alone again. But soon after that, actually, I lost the baby through a miscarriage. And so that's kind of when I realized that the whole time I never had friends, the whole time I never had a boyfriend or anybody who loved me, I was just being manipulated and used. And I let those parts of me that was craving for love or craving for attention, I let it get the best of me. And I refuse to let that happen to me again.
Like Zoe's journey, life can sometimes feel like a dirt road leading to nowhere. The turns we sometimes take seem like the wrong one. A sense of fear can grip us. That fear of the unknown. How do we overcome the experience of having lived through war, civil unrest, poverty, racial inequity, imprisonment, drug abuse, body shaming? How do we overcome these things? Feeling like a prisoner in your own skin. There is hope. You can fly away from this prison. In Genesis, we learn of Joseph, who was given the coat of many colors by his father. Joseph's father, Jacob, favored him and gave Joseph the coat as a gift. As a result, he was envied by his brothers, who saw the special coat as an indication that Joseph would assume family leadership. His brothers' suspicion grew when Joseph told them of his 2 dreams, in which all the brothers bow down to him. The narrative tells that his brothers plotted against him when he was 17 and would have killed him had not the eldest brother Reuben interposed. He persuaded them instead to throw Joseph into a pit and secretly planned to rescue him later. However, while Reuben was absent, the others planned to sell him to a company of Ishmaelite merchants. When the passing Midianites arrived, the brothers dragged Joseph up and sold him to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. The brothers then dipped Joseph's coat in goat blood and showed it to their father, who assumed that Joseph had been torn apart by wild beasts. The story of Joseph is definitely one that is filled with family drama, jealousy, intrigue, betrayal, lies. All this is not new. Not only was Joseph sold into slavery, but he was later accused of a crime he did not commit. How does someone get over this?
The continent of Africa, made up of 54 countries, is the world's second largest and second most populous continent behind Asia. At about 30 million square kilometers, or 11 million square miles, it covers 6% of the Earth's total surface area and 20% of its land area. In 2016, the continent had an estimated 1.2 billion people, accounting for 16% of the world's human population. In Africa, like anywhere else, similarities of the past still exist. As existed in Russia, Ireland, and so many other countries, wars and famines have occurred. How a country transitions from these destructions is worth examining. The key criteria of strategists are the ability to think creatively, inspire new ideas, identify and understand target audiences, and be open-minded in the approach taken to achieve the end results. In 1750 BC, a devastating famine had spread throughout the land of Israel, Egypt, and the rest of the world. Joseph was an important Egyptian official who was given the responsibility of storing and distributing food. His strategy was one of the most brilliant implemented of all time. He selected highly intelligent administrators to oversee the land. They collected and stored 1/5 of the produce during the 7 years of high yield. They then distributed the stored food in the years of famine. When we think of the logistics involved in successfully accomplishing this, it was unprecedented for its time. They were not only distributing food, but they were also distributing livestock, managing large distributions of funds and labor, allocating territory, as well as establishing infrastructure development. Today's world is no different. In order to successfully implement change, one must be a good strategist. Change can come in many forms, small or large, good or bad.
What are some of the services offered at the University of Maryland Safe Center?
We offer case management, immigration services, mental health services. We have a counselor on site. We recently started economic empowerment, connecting them to different employers around the area and training them depending on what type of job and market they're interested in.
And what are the demographics of the clients that you're typically receiving?
So my caseload is split. So I work with international clients and domestic clients. Domestic clients are U.S. citizens. For that specific clientele, for international, most of them are running away from violence from home. They're crossing the border. When they're crossing to the United States, they experience rape, sexual assault. Sometimes they get sold into servitude, and the worst part is when youth are being sold into trafficking to be used for commercial sex. For the domestic ones, they use homeless youth, runaways, and kids that are aging out of the foster care system. So they prey on those victims. Mostly for the homeless one, some of them are addicted to drugs, so they kind of like bring them in by using their drug of choice, keep them doped up, and like making sure that they have that happy feel. For a lot of the kids aging out of the foster care system, they're looking for someone that cares about them, that they feel loved and needed. So they use the Romeo mentality, or like, I love you, you know, I would never hurt you. So that's what they do with the domestic clients. It's like breaking down those like attachment bonds, letting them know like what happened to you, it's not okay. And making sure that they understand that just because a person loves you, that's not how they're supposed to treat you. But international clients is kind of working with them, making sure they understand that just because that happened to you, come into the United States, that shouldn't be the story that you follow, and connecting them to legal services, because they do qualify for T visa, U visas, so they can stay legally in the United States.
Can you talk more about the intersection between domestic violence and human trafficking?
Sure. I will give you an example. A month ago, I met with a client. She was brought here by her husband. She thought she was going to come and be with her husband. 2 months into the relationship, he started bringing friends over, asking her to, you know, if you love me, that's always the question, if you love me, you would do this for me. If you care about me, if you want to see me happy. So it was more of like, if she refused to do what he asked, he would beat her. So it was like this weird like domestic violence and trafficking. Yeah, so it's like she couldn't put a word to it. It was more of like, he's my husband, so I'm gonna do what he tells me to do. So explaining to her that she was a victim of domestic violence and trafficking was very hard, because you couldn't wrap. So it's like,
Sounds complicated.
it's very complicated, because you're using words that they don't mean nothing to them. To us, because we're trying to put, we're trying to create some type of language for us to understand. To them, it just doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of explaining that goes into it. And one thing that I've learned is you have to match the language. So if they're telling you that they're not a victim, don't call them a victim. Call them what they want to be called, even if it makes you uncomfortable.
It's like a sense of agency and autonomy.
Yeah. So a lot of people want to call them survivors. Some of them don't want to be associated with survivor or that word of those terminology. So you just match their language, match what they're saying, and just understand that they're not separate issues. At one point they do overlap, and they do become like this cycle of never-ending violence, because they saw it growing up, and they think because they saw it growing up, it's okay as an adult. And then they continue, and they can teach their kids and the next generation that that's how grandma did it, and now I'm doing it, and now you have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Who do we allow to define us? The world, social media, life circumstances? We are created beings, created with a higher purpose than any and all living creatures. We can think, create, interact. We have self-will and the ability to choose our life circumstances. We are uniquely designed. Why do we compare ourselves to one another? By what we wear and how we look? Love yourselves, whatever shape, color, size you are. Love yourself.
I would tell my younger self that it's better to be alone than to be in bad company. The people that I was around and that I would call my friends, they didn't care about me. They only cared about what I could give them, and they made me feel as though that was the only thing about me that had any importance. And so I definitely think that if I would have just stayed true to myself and my values and what was important to me and stayed alone, I could have attracted maybe better friends, or even just being alone would have been fine. Else. And so I definitely wish that I maybe had or knew more about that when I was back in high school. So for the future, I'm actually currently starting my sophomore year of college. And so I am studying pre-med to become a psychiatrist. I really do think that mental health is important, and being able to stay on top of that, stay healthy, maybe hopefully I can even be in a position to help other people and prevent them from being in the same positions that I was in, because I definitely want to also have some counseling and therapy experience as well.
In the road of life, we can meet many road bumps and detours along the way. We can also become distracted and take turns that lead us to nowhere. Or, in some special moments, our detours can lead us to a special scenic route, the beauty of which we could never imagine. A place where we feel the sense of belonging, acceptance, warmth, love,